Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 120 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined as always by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans and Husker fans.
Hello, everybody. So we are College Football Throwdown, a father-son duo here to do a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we're here today to talk about Nebraska's confirmed new coaches to the offensive staff, as well as some of the latest news on the coaching carousel and things going on in the national world of college football. And of course, our predictions on the semifinal games and the major bowl games for this 2021 season.
All right. Sounds like a good podcast.
That's right. But before we dive into all that, of course, we've got to do our tradition and crack open a beverage. Today, I borrowed one of my roommate's beers. I have a Stella Artois.
Artois.
There you go. Very fancy beer.
Yes, exactly. And I am drinking my favorite Four Peaks Brewing Company beverage, a malty, toasted, lovely Scottish-style amber ale called Kilt Lifter. Here we go. Oh, that sounded good.
Sure did.
Yours was a bottle.
No,
No,
it's a can.
Okay. Usually I drink that in the bottle. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, changing up the pace here a bit.
That's a good beer. I like that beer.
Yeah, well, good. All right. So we're going to talk about the Nebraska news first this week before we dive into the national discussion. And one cool thing that's related to Nebraska, even though it's not football related, is that our Nebraska women's volleyball team, which has always been a perennial power in the world of women's volleyball with John Cook at the helm. We were kind of underdogs this year going into the NCAA tournament with a lot of freshmen on our team. And we were in the same bracket with Texas, the number 2 team in the entire country with all this athleticism. And we ended up beating everybody along our path, played against Texas this past week. And we managed to beat them 3-1. And I know, Dad, you were celebrating loud and clear for that one. Always got to celebrate a win over Texas.
Absolutely. Very happy. They were a number 10 seed, so it's not like they were out in the wilderness or something. But we clearly have had our struggles this year as we try to transition to this new group of players, young, talented, but inexperienced. And it's just so awesome to watch a coach like John Cook take a group of athletes and slowly figure out how to get them and mold them to be the best that they can be at this point, right here at tournament time. And he really is phenomenal about doing that, about getting to that point. And we'll see. I mean, we got 3 freshmen who are significant contributors and a 4th one who's really quite regular as well. And, they all played well in that match against Texas because we needed them all to. If any of them do a little less than they did, we probably lose. Now, the question is, can they rise to that occasion, consistently in these next 2 matches that we would be required for us to win a championship? That's a tall order, but you know what? You take it 1 point at a time, just like John says.
1 point at a time. That's right. All right, so transitioning away from the volleyball, then back to the world of football. We referenced this on our last week's podcast that there were heavy rumors at the time that were recorded about who our new offensive coordinator and offensive line coach were going to be. But we didn't discuss it then because it wasn't confirmed and we had other things on the agenda. And just after our podcast, it was officially confirmed. So now we can dive into it fully that Mark Whipple from Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator, is now going to be our offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And then on the offensive line, we have Donovan Raiola from the Chicago Bears in the NFL.
Right. And both of those are hires that have produced both great applause and great consternation among Husker fans. because you can the glass is half full, glass is half empty as you look at each of these hires. In the case of Whipple, he is a very experienced coach, has been coaching for a long time, has coached at a number of levels, has been a head coach multiple times, and has been, a lot of different positions within the offense and a lot of time as an offensive coordinator. Some time in the NFL and a lot of time in the college ranks and even back to high school. So he's been a coach for many, many years. He knows his stuff, and he's established his own reputation, right? So he's not somebody that Scott will have to bring along or that would defer to Scott, which is kind of what a lot of people hoped would happen, that Scott would truly turn over the offense to someone else and then empower them to do that so that Scott could focus on the team aspect of stuff that seems to be slipping through the cracks quite regularly for Nebraska. So that's the criticism is he hasn't been great success, right? There's a reason why he's still an offensive coordinator. He was a bad head coach, right? He never lasted very long as a head coach. Now, part of that was he moved around a lot, and he was at a place for 2 or 3 years, and then he was someplace else for 2 or 3 years. But you know what? That's the world of coaching. I mean, there's a lot of people that have resumes that look like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's older, and
yeah.
he's near the end of his career.
Yeah, and I we can hold his offensive coordinator successes against him, I think, in our evaluation of the hire. But in terms of as a head coach, I don't know how much of that specifically carries over to being a coordinator, right? Because there have been so many examples of people that were great as coordinators, but terrible as head coaches, and then head coaches that get fired from a place and then go back to being a coordinator somewhere else, and they're able to succeed, right?
Correct. There's a lot of different skill sets required between those two roles. And so you're absolutely right. And he's coming off of a year which was a high year for him personally, because he had a Heisman Trophy finalist there at Pitt playing quarterback. So then it becomes a question of, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Did he have a successful year calling plays at Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh had an incredible talent at quarterback that's going to be playing on Sundays? Or did he significantly contribute to this particular player's development and put him in a position to be successful? And, that's the debatable question, right?
Right. One interesting little side note, because this was with Pittsburgh, I believe, in their conference championship game against Wake Forest, that quarterback that you're talking about had a play where he took it and ran it. And then as the Wake Forest guys were getting close to him to tackle him, he kind of feigned like he was going to go in for a dive, and they kind of backed off. But he just kind of feinted it, and then he kept going and got, some extra yards because of it. I think he might have even scored a touchdown off that. And that came up under scrutiny, of course, complaints from Wake Forest and other folks watching, and the NCAA did implement a rule specifically saying that you can't do that.
Right. I'm surprised that wasn't already addressed. I'm shocked that slide rule didn't already have the specific exception where if someone goes and makes that attempt to fake like they're going to slide, but then continues to run after the other players have kind of eased off, that would be a flag. It should be. It absolutely should be.
Yep.
But since it wasn't, that was brilliant, right?
No, it was.
If the rule wasn't there, then by golly, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree with you. It's a good rule change for sure. I'll admit I haven't been watching much of Pittsburgh this particular season, but the fact that they did win the ACC this year, right, beating Clemson and all that, it's an impressive year for them. And like you say, we knew that Scott wanted to kind of hand the offensive system over to a coach and kind of be more hands-off on the offense. So giving it to a guy with a lot of experience seems good. Also, the fact that he's apparently going to be our offensive coordinator and a quarterback's coach. If he did play a role in that player's development at Pitt, into this good quarterback, then obviously that'd be a good sign for him developing our younger guys. So yeah, it seems like, not a blow your head off, amazing, crazy hire, but a good,
Right.
solid hire.
Yep. Well, and again, given Scott's situation and this gentleman and his age and everything, and he's used to and comfortable with the, short stint. His resume suggests that. So he's an offensive coordinator for hire, and we hired him. So let's see what happens. And if he's able to create some stability within the offensive system without changing it so much that everybody has to start from ground zero, which I don't believe he will, because a lot of his concepts are concepts that we use. Then and he maybe will adopt some of what Scott was doing, and they'll be able to collaborate and come up with a combined system that is quite remarkable, maybe. And if that were the case, then he coaches for 2 or 3 years, helps Scott, solidify his situation in Nebraska, and then he goes off into the sunset or whatever if he wants to. So I think it's an ideal situation as opposed to getting a younger OC who might have a long term outlook, and Scott's not got the stability right now to offer that. So I think this was a reasonably good hire. Obviously, no one's going to know until after next year's done. But as choices go, given what his limits were, I think Scott did pretty well on that hire.
Yep.
Now the other hire is Donovan Raiola, and Donovan is well known among Husker fans, mostly because his older brother Dominic was one of Nebraska's great offensive linemen and a Remington Award winner as a center at Nebraska, and then became a very successful professional football player. Most of his time, I believe, if not all of it, spent at the Detroit Lions. And as you know, that means that he didn't win any Super Bowls. Uh,
Very true.
but he was kind of a fixture and an anchor for that offensive line for almost, well, more than a decade. And so both Dominic and Donovan, the new coach, come from Hawaii and have a lineage there, which can be a very important recruiting aspect for us going forward. And Donovan's a young coach, so he's a guy that's still developing, right? And but he has great enthusiasm. The hope is that he could be a dynamic recruiter, and that he's coming from a recent NFL history, so that he can bring the latest and greatest concepts. And because he was an offensive center, the thing about an offensive center is they really do have to know what everyone else is doing, because usually in most offenses the center is the guy that's making the calls about what he's seeing, what kind of shifts he's seeing in the defensive line, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so that's a guy that probably knows what all the steps and techniques are of the guard positions and the tackle positions. He's also the guy that needs to be able to recognize defensive fronts. And so having a guy with that level of knowledge is a very good place to start if you're going to be an offensive line coach. Right.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Seems like another, solid choice. And I think it's smart for Scott to, go with a mix of old experience as well as more youthful dynamism, right? Because you need those younger guys to be able to recruit, right? And all that
Right.
stuff. Does Donovan have previous experience at the collegiate level before he went to the NFL?
I think yes, his resume did have a small amount of that, but not extensive. No. And then he was an assistant offensive line coach at the professional level. So he doesn't have an enormous resume. Like I said, he's still just getting started. He was a player not that long ago in the NFL, and now he's just a few years removed from that, like maybe 4 or 5 years removed. So he doesn't have a huge resume. But given his lineage and the position that he played, I don't think he's going to lack knowledge. And from everything that people have described him as, he sounds like he's a great communicator. So we'll get to see how that all plays out.
Mm-hmm. We certainly will. And so that leaves two spots still open on our offensive staff. One you would expect to be our running backs coach to fill that particular position. And then the last one was our former quarterbacks coach, but clearly that role is already being filled by Whipple, our offensive coordinator. And
Right.
so that kind of spot is still kind of up for grabs. Of course, all of us here at College Football Throwdown HQ are hoping for a special teams coordinator to properly give the time and attention needed to fix our special teams situation. And Scott has, floated that possibility, but is not committed to it yet.
That is correct. He keeps saying he wishes he could have a special teams coordinator, but the setup now. So just for clarification, Alex, actually, so we have 9 coaches now. So we only have one coaching position left to fill, only one. And currently, we do not have a running backs coach named, nor do we have a special teams coach named. So we either need to name a guy as both running backs and special teams, okay, which would not appease the folks who, um, um, want to be want a full time special teams coach, right? Um, and if you named a running backs coach and didn't have a special teams coach, and then divided special teams among all the coaches, that's basically what we've already had, with one person kind of having the designation of being special teams coordinator, but with a variety of assistants taking ownership for segments of the special teams. That's basically what we've had over these recent years. The challenge really is that we currently have a defensive staff that has we've committed that special teams position to a defensive player position. We don't really have it set up for an offense. We can't give up another offense coach position. We
Well,
need to give up a defensive coach position.
now where you're confusing me, right, is that Scott fired 4 people, right?
Yes, and he's hired 3.
Who? Okay, so who's the third?
Oh, okay. That's Mickey Joseph, our wide receiver coach.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
I
And
missed
Mickey
that
is a
one.
past Nebraska player, was the wide receivers coach for LSU and for the last few years, under Orgeron, and has been is known as a great recruiter, and is a Husker legacy. Obviously, was an incredible quarterback uh, back in the day. He was the number one quarterback in high school. Coming out of high school, he was the number one option quarterback in the country, and it came down to us in Oklahoma, and he chose us on signing day of his high school senior year. It was a big deal back then, but I'm telling you, that was nuts.
You remember it well, clearly.
Oh, I do. I absolutely remember the day that Mickey committed to Nebraska and signed. It was a big deal. Now, his career did not end up being quite as good as people had hoped. And part of that was in a game, I think his junior year, against Oklahoma. Um, he got tackled out of bounds. I mean, the guys tackled him and literally carried him all the way into the benches of um, the Oklahoma Sooners bench. And the benches back then were those metal
Right.
benches, and he got a laceration on his leg that like cut all the way through his muscle and everything in his calf, or in his calf area, lower leg, just totally ruined him. I mean, it was gruesome. It was gruesome. I wonder, there might be a video of that somewhere on YouTube or something where somebody could, but it was awful, and that was the end of Mickey Joseph.
Please tell me it was at least flagged.
Nope, I don't think it was.
What? Oh my
I don't think
God.
it was. I don't even
Oh,
think it
brother.
was.
Okay. Well, okay. So I missed that particular coaching announcement, I
Yeah.
guess.
So there's some questions here now. So they could, for example, reorganize on offense to say, okay, we're going to have Mickey do wide receivers and tight ends as receivers, and then we're going to have Donovan Reala take tight end blocking, and then take Sean Beckton, who's our tight ends coach, and make him our running backs coach, okay, or something like that, which would reshuffle the deck, and then still allow. Then we'd have an additional position to make a special teams coordinator. So we could do something like that. Or what more likely could or should happen is that you would find a way to get it out of the defensive staff. And that probably is easier to happen if one of the defensive coaches chooses on their own to leave, which might very well happen. It would not shock me as all these changes happen in head coaches that some of our, frankly, better defensive coaches are presented with an opportunity and leave the staff to go get a new opportunity that has more stability, right? And then all of a sudden a defensive position is open, and maybe we can reshuffle the deck of our defensive coaches and use that to go special teams. So that's actually what I think Scott's planning is he's anticipating that he's probably going to lose at least one defensive coach. And so he may go ahead and I think he's got a running backs coach in his pocket in Ron Brown that he could take and would be content to have Ron be our running backs coach at least for a year or two. So he doesn't have to announce that fourth coach until other things play out. If it turns out that one of our defensive coaches leaves, then he can reorganize things. If none of those do leave, then maybe he needs to make Ron Brown, the running backs coach, or they do the reorganizing thing with Sean Beckton and Mickey Joseph. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. There's a lot of ways he could go.
Sounds like it. Okay.
It's intriguing. It's actually intriguing. And I think it's a very critical decision for Scott in this whole revitalization. And, I was talking with a good friend of mine who, Brian Clower. He's been on our podcast before actually as a guest and is a huge University of Michigan fan. And of course, they are the Big Ten champions this year and are in the college football playoff. And he spoke to me and, brought some very good points up about the fact that just remember 12 short months ago, there was an awful lot of discussion about Harbaugh being on the hot seat. And Harbaugh did a fairly significant, way more than even Scott has embarked on. He really cleaned house with his offensive staff. I think he ended up getting like 8 out of 10 new coaches. I think he only kept 1 or 2 guys, if that, from his staff. And he created a whole new set of coaches. And magically 1 year later, they're Big Ten champions. Okay. Now he was in a different situation. His team was full of talent and he had continued to recruit at a very high level. So he knew he had talent on his team. He just felt it was underperforming and he needed to revitalize his staff. And he was able to successfully do that. And he's out of the woods, I believe, at this point. So the hope would be that there is a path that's been shown for Scott that, hey, you make the right choices here, and then you guys and you give them the vision and then you get out of the way and let them be the coach and you be the head coach, all right, and coach the coaches and manage personality and team culture, then we're into something here, right? And next year we win 7 or 8 games, and because we have a schedule that at least opens the possibility to that, and now you got a little stability, and then you kind of build from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and when Scott's new contract details got announced and the fact that he was extended and everything, I brought that up on the podcast because Jim Harbaugh went through something very similar, right? Where his pay was cut significantly and, his contract was kind of redone and the expectation was set that, I don't think it was to the same extent of Scott where it's like, by game 6, we're going to evaluate if we're going to fire you or not. But right. But it was a pretty significant shift, like you said, and he managed to pull it off. So, I don't anticipate something that dramatic from Scott, but also Scott doesn't have to, become Big Ten champions next year, right?
Next year.
We just need like 7 wins,
Right. We need to win 7 regular season games and then play in a bowl game, a moderate bowl game, and win it, so that we end up with a 8-5 season. Right? Something like that, with some optimism that, with that leads to some positive recruiting performance, both in the portal areas as well as in the traditional freshman class recruiting, and start building on a philosophy and a stability that says, okay, now we see a path where Nebraska can be competitive again. And then once we get to competitive, then the bar raises again, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's just the way it would go. But we need to get there first. So we can't even be talking about Big Ten West championships or Big Ten championships until we can get competitive, and then we can start talking about that. And Scott's got a very short window to do this in. So I hope he um, senses truly and completely the urgency that he has to have.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear to him. I mean, it's very clear to us as fans. You would
Yeah.
think internally there's more, it's more apparent. There's things he
Yep.
knows that we don't. Um,
Yep.
one positive sign I have seen in some of our recruiting and stuff as we're getting close here to the early signing day. That's actually this Wednesday, the 15th. I think we got another, it was either a punter or a kicker. So I see that as when we talked about a 5-star that apparently we got committed to us last week for kicking. So I'm glad to see that clearly the coaching staff is making that a priority, getting some new blood in the special teams game. Whether that, equates to a special teams coordinator is another matter, but at least we are pursuing that.
Right. No, I would agree with you. And it's gonna be interesting. And the thing that's gonna be challenging for us is the negative recruiting that's going on, the Scott's dead man walking concept or idea is in everybody's heads across the country. The media, it's there, it's everywhere. So Scott and his staff have a huge uphill battle to climb to overcome that. And the only way to do that is to win on the field. All the other crap means nothing now. Okay. You can't sell promise or future vision or any of that until you start winning on the field. And he knows that. So this is the down and dirty time now. He's got to get people that want to be part of the reason that this sleeping giant in Nebraska awakens. That would be the best message I could give somebody is, hey, you come to Nebraska and you be part of the team that because you're an experienced player that's got 2 years left or only 1 year left, but you come in and you're part of what makes us transition to a winning football team and going to a bowl game. Man, the people in Nebraska will love you forever, right? I mean, you will be able to hang around and get great NIL and all that because they'll love you. I mean, imagine if Toure wasn't a super senior. Imagine if he had only been a sophomore, right? And we still had 2 years of him, right? What would Toure's NIL possibilities be in Lincoln next year? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's definitely true.
So that's what they got to sell.
Yep. I mean, the passion of Nebraska fans, both for good and for ill, is one of
It's
the
real.
selling points of
Yeah.
of Nebraska. Getting to play in front of a sold out crowd every single home game. There's a good number of places that can say that. But not so many on the level of record that we've been having recently, right? What other team is selling out their crowds when they have 3 and 4 win seasons?
Right. Exactly. Oh yeah. Well, and the running joke again, we are the best 3-9 football team in history.
Yep, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, statistically, everyone would agree with that.
yep, for whatever that's worth.
Exactly.
Yeah. So transitioning now to the national side of things, we talked about some of the coaching changes that have shaken up college football last week, and one of the big open questions was who is going to be the new head coach at Oregon, since their coach ended up going to Miami. We got the answer to that this past week. They ended up getting Dan Lanning from Georgia. He was Georgia's defensive coordinator, and now he's heading over to Oregon. Which I commented to you was kind of interesting because when you think about Oregon, what do you think of? You think of the spread offense, pass it all over the place, super aggressive offense, and you don't think so much about their defense. And here's clearly a very good defensive mind coming over to Oregon. So I'm curious to
Right.
see is he really going to try to implement something different, or is he going to adapt his style to the Oregon style?
Well, I think he's going to bring his defense with him. There's no doubt about that. I don't think he's going to go out there to Oregon and change the way he tries to approach things defensively. But he's clearly a great recruiter because he wouldn't have been on the Georgia staff without it because that's a prerequisite especially for the powers in the SEC. I mean, that's one of the things that separates them from everybody else is that they have learned how to put a premium on coaches who are exceptional recruiters because they understand that yes, you win and scheme with X's and O's, but you win the game with the Jimmies and the Joes, and that is number one. And that has been the number one thing for Oregon for quite some time. That's been one of their aces in the hole because of all the bling and things that they can promote about their situation up there in Eugene. Now, what I would guess is he's probably, well, I haven't watched it close enough to see what's happened to the offensive coaches from Oregon. How many of them stayed and are going to be hired by this new coach? Or how many of them followed Cristobal down to Miami?
Mm-hmm. That is important.
And I didn't I have to admit that I don't have the details on that, but I think that would be significant in figuring out what is this new coach going to do with Oregon's offense, because if all those guys are gone, well then he's got a clean slate. He can go out and hire, an offensive coordinator of his choosing. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. One other interesting coaching rumor that's just come out is apparently there's some sort of report, saying they had insider knowledge that the Chicago Bears were reaching out behind the scenes to Ryan Day at Ohio State to try to get him to come into the NFL. And of course, today Ryan Day denied it in some sort of press conference thing. But we all know from past experience that that doesn't mean it's not happening. You mentioned that you think this might have something to do with the fact that Lincoln Riley, is now at USC, and he was kind of on the tip of everyone's tongue in terms of possible NFL coach. So what do you make of this rumor?
Right. I think you're gonna. I don't think this is gonna be the last one that you hear where Ryan Day's name is going to come up as being a guy that NFL teams are interested in. And I think the Lincoln Riley connection is simply that whoever the hot coach is in the collegiate ranks, especially if they're known for their offense, then they're going to get a lot of NFL inquiry, right? And so it takes a little longer for defensive, geniuses to rise through and then get that attention from an NFL head coaching perspective. But I just think that he's going to be the hot commodity probably for the next couple of years. Although it'll be really important that he come back next year with a successful season like he had this year. Ryan Day, I'm speaking of, because he's made some changes on his defensive staff already. Even mid-season, he made changes. So it'll be curious to see how that all plays out. And can they get back on the winning ways against Michigan, or has Michigan turned the corner? Next year will determine that.
Yeah, that's very true. And we, of course, hope to see Michigan not fall back into the same decade of losing to Ohio State that we've seen up till now.
Actually, I would love that. I would love that. And here's why. We just got off, we being Nebraska, just came off a period of 6 years of scheduling. Actually, it turned out to be 8 because we played them the 2 years prior to this new schedule being created after Rutgers and Maryland got involved. But Ohio State has been our designated crossover for the last 6 years. Okay. Next year, we do not play Ohio State for the first time in 6 years. But guess who our new designated rival is for the next 6 years, starting next year?
Michigan.
Michigan. And who did we play this year?
Michigan.
So we will play Michigan 7 years in a row. Now, tell me how many times Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have played Michigan and Ohio State, over the last 12 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, it's less than Nebraska.
Yeah.
And here we are. We're going to do it for another 6 years now. We're going to have Michigan on our schedule every year.
Yep.
The scheduling system is absurd. So I don't want Michigan to just figure it out and become the big bully of the Big Ten East, just as we're putting them on our schedule for the next 6 years. I
Yeah.
would rather have the Michigan team we played this year or in previous years that was still trying to find themselves.
Mm-hmm. Nope. I see where you're coming from there. We actually, when we were together for Thanksgiving, we did a little looking ahead to some of our future schedules. I believe it was the 2024 season for Nebraska is another
Mm-hmm.
really tough schedule. And then we looked at like Wisconsin. Wisconsin had a pretty tough schedule. And then Iowa, of course, had like a piss easy, ridiculous
Right.
schedule compared
Yep.
to
Well,
us.
Nebraska plays uh, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, and wasn't it Michigan State? No, no, it was just those three.
Yeah.
Penn State, then Ohio State, then Michigan, in order, in 3 consecutive weeks. No,
Bye week.
bye week or anything in between. 3 straight weeks. Those three teams we play. Boom, boom, and boom. Now, in that same year, Wisconsin does also play those three somehow, right? Or at least two of those three.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think it was those three maybe, but it wasn't all
but
in a
not in
row.
order. Not all in a row. Exactly. Which is a big deal. And then in that same year, Iowa's crossovers were like Rutgers and Maryland.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, we
it's crap.
we've got to have well, we might have to look way out in advance. But we've got to have some easy schedules coming our way eventually.
Well, you would think, but by then, the road grader has already cleared the level of the ground, and our empire is dust. So, there now. See, what I think is going to happen is by the time that Nebraska's gone through this gauntlet, then they'll get smart as a Big Ten conference and say, God, we got to do something about the scheduling. It's just so uneven, and then they'll figure out a way to make it more even. But we will have not reaped any of the benefit because there will have been a decade or more where it was not even, and they let it go because they needed it because that was the TV contract.
Hmm.
So, as much as I'm a Jim Delaney fan for what he did in terms of helping facilitate the process of Nebraska getting into the league and getting all the money that he did from the TV contracts, I bemoan him for the fact that he left a legacy of an extremely unbalanced scheduling system, and not just in football. There's some other things I could point to as well.
Yes. Well, we'll leave those for another time. Um,
Exactly.
Last big national news we want to go ahead and mention here is, of course, the Heisman Trophy ceremony happened this past week. And it wasn't too surprising that Bryce Young from Alabama ended up winning it. He played amazing in that game against Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah, he
Um,
did.
yeah, so when I was watching that game, I'm like, oh boy, he's probably gonna win, isn't he? Um, so yeah, not too surprising. I did see there were some. I think there was a defensive player from Michigan actually got the second most votes. So that was kind of heartening to see. Although I then saw a tweet from a Nebraska fan who said, "Annual reminder of the fact that Ndamukong Suh got gypped out of the Heisman Trophy." And he posted Ndamukong Suh's insane stats, from that year.
Right. Right. Well, and if it's the same tweet I saw, what he did was this was Ndamukong Suh's numbers, and then this was the numbers of Alabama's entire defensive line on a national championship team. This is Texas's entire defensive line on a year that they won the national championship. I mean, it was the entire teams, the top three teams or whatever of that year, and then Ndamukong Suh's individual statistics, and
Yeah.
he matched up pretty well.
No, he did. He
Well,
surpassed
that's the
them in
thing.
some ways.
Well, there was some national pundit who basically said the uh, the Heisman Trophy stopped being an award for the most outstanding college football player when Ndamukong Suh didn't receive it. It is now simply the award given to the best quarterback on the best team every year, because in many ways it has become that you have to be one of the top two or three teams in the country, and you have to play quarterback to win the award. Now I will concede that here's been recently a defensive player who won it, but it wasn't Indomitian. I don't even remember who it was. I have stopped paying attention to the award for that reason. When Indomitian didn't, it diminished in my mind. It doesn't mean as much as it used to
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think.
because they screwed it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're not alone in that regard, And I think if you asked any of the folks running the Heisman today, in retrospect, they'd say, yeah, that was a mistake. But, what's done is done, right? You can't go back. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So now we're going to talk about some of these upcoming games. This is our last remote podcast here before we get into the holidays next week. I'll be traveling back to Michigan to see you, and we'll get to do a podcast in person, which will be fun.
Yes.
Yeah. But we've got the some of the bowl games to predict here and talk about, as well as, of course, the semifinal games for the college football playoff. And I've written down here some of the bigger bowl games. This was kind of interesting for Clemson, who obviously, was expected to be in the playoff this year, but struggled quite a lot for their standards, to the point now that they're playing in the Cheez-It Bowl with Iowa State.
Yes, exactly. Well, but here's the thing. They righted that ship. I mean, I think if you've got their record in front of you, I think it's like they were 9-3. Right?
I think that's
they
right.
ended up only losing like 3 games, and one of the games they lost was to Georgia, who's obviously a good football team. So you start doing the math on that. They didn't tumble as far as people think they did. They did struggle against some of these lesser teams, and so that was the shocker, right? When they were struggling to beat Syracuse and some other teams that had been historically middle of the road or so ACC squads. That's what was the more shocking thing was the scores themselves. Not necessarily did they win or lose, but that they didn't dominate.
Right. I'm looking here at their record, and yeah, you're right. They lost 3 times,
Yep.
which was to Pitt, to Georgia, like you mentioned, and then to NC State in overtime.
Okay.
I think that was probably
Right.
the surprising one.
That's right. Now there's no harm in losing to the team that ends up winning the ACC championship, right? So all of a sudden you relook at that awful season by Clemson, and it's maybe not so bad, right? And I suspect we'll see them bounce back, and they will look pretty good again next year because they still have a ton of talent on that team.
Yep.
Now with this new reality of the portal and that sort of stuff, things aren't as stable as they used to be. So I don't know. I mean, there's more unpredictability in that, how that all plays out. But I still believe the culture at Clemson will, do their thing. But keep in mind, Clemson lost their defensive coordinator and I believe their offensive coordinator. So they're going to be having some major transition going on within their coaching staff, not only for this bowl game, but going into next season, obviously.
Very true. Very true. Another interesting one, including a Big Ten team this time, is Wisconsin is playing against Arizona State in the Vegas Bowl.
Wow. Okay. Now I had the opportunity to go to attend a Arizona State game, and I got to tell you, Wisconsin's defense is probably going to break the Arizona State quarterback in half. I swear to you, that Arizona State quarterback, his name is Daniels, and he's quick, but he is the tiniest dude I've ever seen. His legs look like they're the thickness of my arms. I mean, he is one lean dude. Now he's Gumby, man. He can twist and do crazy stuff, but I'd hate to see what happens with that tough Wisconsin defense breaking him in half.
Yeah, that definitely might be a factor. Yeah, I'd like to think that Wisconsin should be able to win that. Of course, their kind of surprise loss to Iowa, I think, took all of us off guard. So
you mean not Iowa, Minnesota? We lost to Iowa on that day.
Oh, that's
that
right. You're correct.
It was Minnesota.
It was Minnesota that they lost to. So it'll just be interesting to see how they bounce back from that. I
I
guess.
agree.
And then in the Outback Bowl, we've got Penn State versus Arkansas from the SEC. And
That that sounds like a good game.
yeah, yeah, Penn State's a bit down this year. They're not actually ranked. Arkansas is ranked 21st according to this, so that should be an interesting one. And then
And what bowl game was that? Outback?
Outback Bowl. Yep.
See that's a nice bowl game to go to for those two teams, given where they're ranked. You know what I mean? It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah, not bad. And then Michigan State is playing against that ACC champion we were just talking about, Pittsburgh, in the Peach Bowl this year.
Yes. Okay. That'll be an interesting game too. That'll be a very interesting game because obviously Pitt's done some really good things. Narduzzi, the head coach at Pitt, was a longtime defensive coordinator at Michigan State, so he knows the program. He knows, a little bit about what's going on there. But obviously, he was there under D'Antonio, so all the coaches are different and everything. But still, he understands Michigan State's mentality and what they want to try to accomplish. So that'll be interesting to see. But if Michigan State shows up healthy and with that running back ready to go, they might make some noise in that game.
They certainly would. They certainly would. In the Alamo Bowl this year, this is one of the matchups I'm most looking forward to. We've got Oregon against Oklahoma, both teams that have lost their head coaches now and kind of had disappointing seasons by their standards. So with Oklahoma having, lost some of those players that we talked about last week, right, to transferring and all that stuff, I'm kind of curious to see how that one's going to play out.
Yeah, me too. And again, this gets back to in this new era of the college football playoff, where the only bowl games that really matter are those two semifinals in the eyes of an awful lot of people, and regretfully, most of the players, most of the athletes now. So, if you're a team at Oklahoma and you're a starter that's a senior, and this is your last game before you go on to either whatever's next in your life or go on in pursuit of an NFL career, how much are you focused on that versus how much are you focused on just staying healthy and avoiding injury? This is one of those things where which team really wants to be there?
Yep, that's true. And I think I've already started to see some headlines of X player is sitting out of
Oh
the
yeah,
bowl game and things like
yep,
that. So we'll see how that affects some of these teams when we're closer to those games. This is one I'm actually going to throw a score prediction on, just because I think it's a cool matchup of two, well regarded, historically speaking, well regarded teams. Even though Oklahoma has lost some of those players and obviously had all the chaos of Lincoln Riley stepping away, I know that Bob Stoops has kind of stepped in, right, to be the interim coach for this bowl game. And obviously we know he's a very experienced and talented coach and all that. And with how badly Oregon got trounced twice by Utah to end their season, I can't believe that they're going to be able to bounce back from that, playing their best football. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that Oklahoma wins, although I don't know if it'll be a big win in terms of score. So I'll go ahead and say that Oklahoma ends up winning 45 Oklahoma to 35 Oregon.
interesting. Now, here's the thing that you didn't mention in that description of that game, and I don't know the answer either, so maybe you know more. And that is who's coaching Oregon for this bowl game? Is the new coach? Did the new coach leave Georgia and go immediately, and is
No,
going to coach in the bowl game,
no, he didn't
or
leave.
is it okay? So he's sticking around and going to be still with Georgia since Georgia's in the playoff, and so that means that Oregon is being coached by some interim assistant who already has been passed over for the head coaching job. So it's not one of those situations where he's auditioning, right? Um, so I would have to agree with you that if I'm looking at those two staffs, I'm going to say Oklahoma is where I would lean. But again, the whole upheaval in Oklahoma, it could be one of those where they just don't show up with their hearts in it, and then they get rolled. But I think that's almost a 50-50 equal possibility for either one of these teams. So I would agree with you. I'm gonna go with the Bob Stoops coach team and go with Oklahoma as well. And in fact, I would say that I think that one of these teams is going to give up. So whoever has success early and can get ahead of the other one, I think the other team will give it up. So I think it's going to be a big score. So I'll say it's going to be 40-45 to like 17.
Okay, interesting. I did just confirm that I was indeed correct about Dan Lanning staying with Georgia for the playoff. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently, he is the youngest Power Five head coach in the nation at age 35.
Well, that is young.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, they're swinging for the fences again. I think some of these schools, and I wonder about this for our athletic director, if in fact he is in the market next year, is is that to go ahead and make the decision to go after a young developing head coach in the hopes that you're going to invest in them long term because you're going to buy them cheap, right? Because they don't have a history, because they're not a reputable, they don't have the reputation yet. They have a good up and coming reputation, potential's there, but they don't have the pedigree and the resume to demand the big bucks, right? So you're able to sign them up for a little below the stupid, absurd rates that are going on for people like Lincoln Riley and whoever that other guy was. Well, hell, even Mel Tucker. I mean, Mel Tucker's done a good job at Michigan State, but is he deserving of almost $10 million a year? That's just crazy.
Right.
So so I think you get somebody for half that, who's still happy to do it because they don't have a resume that makes them feel like that's a disrespectful or something. And then as they succeed and improve and mature, you hang with them because you can afford to.
Now,
So that'd be interesting.
it would be interesting. I don't think it would look good optically, though, for Nebraska because we already took the financially smart, austere, decision this year, right? By not firing Scott for the larger money and instead giving him one more year and bringing his money down for next year and all that. So I think if Trev Alberts, if it doesn't go well and Scott does get fired, then Trev Alberts again, does something kind of on the cheap, to get, some younger guy. I think some Nebraska fans would call BS on that. And number
Oh yeah,
two,
they will.
we're coming off of Scott Frost being hired, right? Who was obviously a very hot commodity right after that UCF undefeated season, but was still a very young head coach, right?
Right,
And in that scenario, obviously it hasn't worked out.
right.
So I think there would be more pressure on him to get somebody with more experience, kind of like Baylor's head coach, who we talked about last week, who we thought might be
Oh
going to Oregon. He's
yeah.
still available.
Well, he's not available. He's obviously the Baylor coach, but yes, you're right. I mean, I think we're going to have two choices here next year if it does come to that, and that would be to go big and go after somebody like Aranda and likely have to pay him top dollar to get him, or I think there is a very real possibility that if you're a young athletic director like Trev Albers at a place that's your destination school, this is not a stepping stone athletic director job for Trev Albers. This is his destination. This is where he wants to be and probably would like to visualize he and his family being in that role as AD for decades at Nebraska. And he's young enough that he could. Okay. So he wants to find a coach that will have a tenure potentially right along with him that's long and successful. So so I
True.
still think that there's going to be a strong desire on his part to get a younger coach. Now, Dave Aranda is not necessarily an old coach. I mean, he's not young like Scott was young, but he's not old. So he's a guy that you could hire with the idea that he's going to be with you for 15 years or something like that if he turned it around. And I just love the way he speaks. I like his mentality. That's all the part. Those are the things I like about him, and he's obviously a brilliant defensive mind, which I'm always a fan of great defense. So a powerful offense and a great defense. So anyway, we'll pass the Dave Aranda bus a few times along the road here in the next 12 months, I suspect.
I'm sure we will. Switching back over to the bowl games, we've also
Yes.
got the Citrus Bowl with Iowa, the runner-up in the Big Ten, playing against Kentucky in the Citrus Bowl.
Ooh. Oh, okay. That's not a good matchup for Iowa.
You think?
I I think Kentucky's gonna take them to the woodshed.
Well, just with their speed and everything else.
Yep, yep. And our ex player,
Wandale
who has become their
Robinson.
superstar, is going to have a big day.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it'll be nice at least to see Wandale having success. I always like seeing that.
Yeah,
Um,
he was a guy that, even though he wasn't happy with how he was being used when he was at Nebraska, because we were using him because we didn't have our stuff together. We were using him in ways that he was not built to be used, even though he's a great football player. And so we were just using him as a football player, not in his highest and best spot. Now he's in a situation where he's being used by that offensive coordinator because they have other components in place, and um, he's going to be a special talent.
mhm.
I don't know about NFL. We'll see on that, but as a college player, guy's a stud. He always gave great effort.
That's definitely true. And then in the Fiesta Bowl this year, we've got number 5 Notre Dame playing against number 9 Oklahoma State.
Wow. Okay, that's right. I remember this one. Um, yeah, and again, Notre Dame with a new coach.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling Notre Dame's going to be playing really, really hard for this new coach.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and he's somebody who got promoted from within, so he's getting
yes,
into it, into the groove of it right away.
absolutely. I would pick Notre Dame in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I picked Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game, and they kind of disappointed me with their results against Baylor. You know, we talked about how Baylor was able to really shut them down offensively for the majority of that game. Um, and Notre Dame is talented enough that I think they could do something similar.
Right.
So,
They're going to have that game film to look at. And the new coach from Notre Dame was their defensive coordinator.
mm-hmm.
So he's going to have that defense locked and loaded.
Yep.
Yep. So the real question would be, what is Oklahoma State's defense, which was actually one of the better defenses in the Big 12 this year. So the question is, what defense shows up for them? If
Yep.
Oklahoma State can hang in there, then we're going to be good to go.
Yep.
So
And then another Big 12 team, of course, the Big 12 champion this time, Baylor, is playing against number 8 Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. So kind of another Big 12 SEC matchup there.
Okay. Um, well, even though I was kind of frustrated with some of Dave Aranda's decisions, I'm going to go with my guy, Dave Aranda, in this situation, even though Ole Miss has been very successful this year. And, Lane Kiffin has really started making that into a program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He might finally mature. He might finally be maturing as a head coach.
yeah. It's taken him some time, but it seems like he's getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think on that one? Who would you pick?
I I think I'm gonna lean Ole Miss on this one,
Yeah.
just because I expect that SEC talent to come out to play. And even though we were just talking about how Baylor was able to shut Oklahoma State down offensively for most of the game, right? When I came in to start watching, that was when Oklahoma State had that long, nice drive where they're getting first downs and literally came like a centimeter away from winning as their dude extended for the pylon. So Baylor
Right.
nearly scuffed that victory for
They
themselves.
did.
So I don't know if they'll be able to hold on against a talented SEC team like Ole Miss.
You may be right on that. We'll see.
And then this one we'll give a prediction on our last bowl game to discuss here: Ohio State versus Utah in the Rose Bowl. Utah being the actual Pac-12 champion, while Ohio State, coming second fiddle to Michigan this time in that division of the Big Ten.
Right, right. And yeah, that's an interesting matchup because I mean, Utah was a team that was playing as well as just about anybody in the country. I mean, if this had been an NCAA basketball tournament type of structure, Utah would have been the team that no one wanted to play, right? They would have wanted to stay away from them just because they had looked so good. Now, maybe that was partially because they were playing Oregon twice, a team that maybe wasn't fully invested because they knew something about their coach not being there for the long haul or something. You know, you never know what the internal team dynamics are that are going on in a situation like that. And so, was it that Utah was really that crisp and perfect, or is it more likely that it's Utah just benefiting from Oregon being discombobulated?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of leaning in a similar way. There is the question of Ohio State's, focus, right? Because obviously, even though they're going to the Rose Bowl, it's a bit of a disappointing result for them. They thought they'd be in the playoff again this year. They got kind of trounced by Michigan this time around. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of their big players maybe sit out of one of these bowl games, which I think would then I think I would definitely lean towards Utah, who's probably happy to be there, right? Because they kind of they weren't expected to win the Pac-12 this year. So I think from that, if that's how it plays out, I think Utah wins. If Ohio State does keep its players and comes focused, I think they win pretty solidly.
Yeah, the real matchup here for me on the uh, Utah side is how do they match up defensively against Ohio State's offense and specifically Ohio State's wide receivers and quarterback, who are obviously very good. I mean, until the Michigan game, that quarterback Stroud was one of the top Heisman candidates. So, um, what happens in this interim, right? So this is where I think we're going to see get a little insight into Ryan Day because he's got some, gaps in the armor that he needs to get shored up, and having time to prepare for this bowl game is the opportunity for him to do that with all of this talent that he's got. He's going to have more talent at his disposal than Utah does, but Utah's coach is probably one of the best coaches at maximizing what he gets out of his talent, and you can almost be assured they're going to be sharp and ready to go. So it'll take a great effort from Ohio State to win this game. But Ohio State's the more talented team. So the Ohio State coaching staff get their players committed and involved enough to get there? But it is the Rose Bowl still, see, and that still carries a lot of weight to Big Ten teams and players. So I think that's a saving grace for Ohio State to avoid maybe the big letdown.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Ohio State here, and say that the Ohio State talent rises to the occasion, especially with all this time to prepare, and they take the whole Rose Bowl thing seriously, and they go out there and they just have too much offense for Utah to keep up.
Okay. What's your score prediction for that one then?
Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna say that um, um, Utah is going to score some points. So Utah is going to score 28 points, but Ohio State is going to score 38 points.
Okay. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Ohio State as well. I actually work down in Pasadena, so when I drive down there, they've got the banners up on the light poles for the Rose Bowl and everything already. So I know it's coming here. It's coming. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna predict Ohio State wins, and I agree that Utah is gonna score some points. I'll actually go a little higher scoring. I'll say Utah gets 35, and Ohio State has to score 42 to win.
Okay, there
All
we
right.
go.
Now we get to those semifinal games, which of course we talked a bit about last week, but we'll talk a little more in depth here. And we'll start with the Cotton Bowl, which is of course Alabama versus Cincinnati. Last I looked, Cincinnati was minus 13.5 underdogs going into this game, and there's no doubt that they are going to be major underdogs. I hold out some small amount of hope that they catch Alabama a bit unprepared, a bit relaxed, and are able to surprise people, then pull off the greatest Cinderella story we've ever seen. But that's a small hope in my heart. I think Alabama's going to take control early and just hold that lead.
I'm going to say that Cincinnati will surprise Alabama early with a well constructed and organized drive, and at the end of the first quarter, it'll still look like it's a game. But by halftime, Alabama will start flexing its muscles, and then in the second half, Alabama pretty much solidifies the victory. Now, I also believe that Alabama probably won't, in this case, since there's another game after it, won't run up the score like they might be inclined to do if it was a national championship game or a conference championship game. So I believe it'll end up being a comfortable victory for Alabama because they will have control defensively as well as on offense. But he'll call off the dogs once he gets about a 28-point lead. So I'm going to say it's going to end up being like 35-7, Alabama.
Oof. I think I'm going to presume that Cincinnati is going to score more than that. This isn't the Alabama defenses of yore, right? Like they're still obviously very good, but they're not to the level that we've seen them at in the past, right? So I think Cincinnati is going to score some points, but I think Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, and Alabama's offense are going to score more. So Alabama is going to win, but I'm going to predict a higher scoring game. Let's say it's Cincinnati 21 to Alabama 45.
Okay. All right. That's a good. You got it right. I think that's probably a better assessment than me. As I listen to your logic, I think you're very sound there.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And then we've got the other semifinal, the Orange Bowl, which is Michigan against Georgia. And I'm going to be the optimist here and say that Michigan is playing kind of like Utah, right? They're playing their best football here at the end of the year. They did have some shaky moments against Iowa, right? That game was closer than the score would lead you to believe, but they were still in control for the whole game, and they really were impressive against Ohio State. So they're very excited to be here, versus Georgia, was undefeated and then kind of got rocked by Alabama, and so they're still in the playoff, but they're not in the position they thought they would be in, right? And I'm going to hope that Harbaugh has come with a really good game plan, even though it's down in Florida, right? Obviously closer to Georgia. But I definitely don't want to see a rematch of Georgia versus Alabama in the national championship game. So I'm going to be an optimist here and predict that Michigan is going to beat Georgia. I think both defenses will come ready to play. Michigan has relied on their running game, and I'm blanking on his name, but their great running back who's gotten great.
Well, they really have two. So Gorham, and then the other guy, I think his last name starts with not Wilson, but I feel like it's a M or a W.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, yeah. The guy we can't remember is the one who really went off on Ohio State.
Right.
But, of course, Georgia's got that great defense. And we saw them be able to stop Alabama's run sometimes, but they also kind of got tired, right? And their size was kind of used against them by Alabama. So I think Michigan should take a note out of Nick Saban's playbook there and see what they can do with that. So I'm going to predict that Michigan wins, but it'll be a close, good game. And I'm going to say it'll end up being Michigan, let's say, what would that be? 24 to Georgia 21.
Wow. Okay. So you're thinking a little. Well, so I like your logic on this one too, Alex. Um, um, however, I think, and maybe this is, I mean, I voiced myself quite a bit here. I hate this playoff combination. I hate what they did. They should have done whatever they had to do to manipulate the data because they had the ability to do it, so that they would have created a matchup of of Alabama against Georgia, and then Michigan against Cincinnati, so that they would be guaranteed a national championship game that had two regions of the country represented and not be an SEC championship game. So there's part of me that wants it to be a national championship game so I can boycott this SEC bullshit. Okay? So, with that said, I'm going to say it's a Georgia. Um, it's a Georgia victory, but like you, it's going to be close, but I think it'll be higher scoring. So I'm going to go like 35-31, Georgia on top
Right.
in that game. And then, which would then put together an Alabama Georgia national championship game.
Now, you've mentioned this boycott on 2 episodes now, but you do realize that you're on a podcast that talks about college football, right?
I, I, I do, but I'm just so sick of this screwed up system that keeps allowing, you know, so much manipulation from media partners and things like that that lead to these decisions that all line up perfectly to support one particular conference. And I'm tired of it. So, it's diminished my ability to enjoy the rest of the sport, because now it's almost a write-off that the SEC is going to win the championship pretty much every year, or at least 70-80% of the time every year, because they're going to be gifted the path.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sick of it. Sick of it.
Yes. Well, yeah, we've got plenty of fodder for discussion for the off season this year. Between all the different craziness going on in college football and on NIL and all that sort of stuff, and the SEC,
Absolutely.
The conference realignment and all that stuff. So there'll be plenty to keep us talking here as we get into January.
Yes. So you're predicting a Michigan versus Alabama national championship game,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm predicting a Georgia versus Alabama national championship game. So neither of us are going swinging for the fence and going after Cincinnati on this projection. Not really sticking our arms out too far. I like your Michigan pick. I kind of want to pick Michigan because I want to be a little bit of a Big Ten homer, and I would love it if we did get that. But I just have this sneaky suspicion that Georgia's going to be a little angry because of the way they performed in that Alabama game, and they're going to come out fired up. And I suspect that the head coach, Smart, is going to be less than pleased with his defensive coordinator, who let him down in some respects against Alabama.
Yep. Well, not to mention that same defensive coordinator is leaving for the Oregon job.
Right, exactly. So he's going to tell him, listen, if you're here, you need to be here. You need to be all in.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was curious when you talked with Brian Clower, our Michigan friend and big super fan. What was his thoughts on them playing Georgia?
Well, he seemed reasonably optimistic. I would say that he's always takes the worst case scenario. So he's probably stating publicly and outwardly that Georgia's likely to beat him. But I know that he believes that Michigan is certainly capable of beating Georgia, and he can clearly see a Michigan versus Alabama championship game. But then he thinks we would get crushed by Alabama.
Right. Yeah. Well, I hope Michigan makes it there at least, beating Georgia and making the national championship, even if they lose to Bama, that would still be a victory for them
huge.
for this season.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it already is, and so Brian has shared that he feels like at this point everything else is gravy. They're raking in recruits right now. I mean, everything is positive for Michigan right now. They've already gained enormous momentum from that whole deal.
Yeah. And the running back's name that we were forgetting earlier is Hassan Haskins.
Haskins. So it wasn't an M or a W.
Not quite, not quite. But you could pat yourself on the back for that one, Dad.
Yeah. Woohoo.
All right. So, yep, next podcast we should be either we'll be talking about some sort of urgent Nebraska news that might pop up, something crazy on coaching side of things, national football wise, or we'll be chatting about some of the bowl games and the semifinals and all that fun stuff in person. Maybe
Right.
we can. I was just thinking if Michigan does beat Georgia, we've got to get Clower on that podcast. I think.
Oh yeah, I agree. And here's the thing: is that um, the thing that drives me even more crazy about this is those two semifinal games are on New Year's Eve day and evening. Who's the idiot who thought that was a good idea? Because they ought to be taken outside the barn and get the shit kicked out of them.
Yep. Well, because like you mentioned on a past on last week's podcast, and actually when I was putting up some of our older archive podcasts, I remember listening to one where we were talking about that same issue of the New Year's Eve game, and they ran it that particular year, whichever year that was, and it didn't go well. They got bad ratings, and they switched
It
the
was
next year. So
right.
I don't understand what the logic is of trying it again.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all to me. And they're going to tell you it has to do with what day of the week New Year's Day falls on and all this sort of stuff. And, what they got to do to avoid their commitments with the NFL and their television partners and not interrupting, other things that are already scheduled. But I'm sorry, even if you had to push out this insistence that a national championship game has to be on a Monday night, which they've started doing, right? Where the game now is not even on a Saturday. The national championship game is on a Monday night. Uh, push it out another day. Make it Tuesday, make it Wednesday. That national championship game can be 1 or 2 days later. It's already into the second semester. There's just no reason for them to have these two semifinal games be on anything other than New Year's Day. They should be on New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, to me, it's crazy.
What I'm looking right now, New Year's Day is on a Saturday this year, so it seems obvious, right?
Yeah. So if that's true, why in the heck wouldn't you have put those two games on Saturday? Because they want to have the national championship games on their own day. They don't want it watered down with all kinds of other coverage. They want to be able to build up to those two games and have the exclusive audience. So that's why they need to have. And so then if they had all those games, if they had those games, then what do they do with all the bowl games? Right. So that's the challenge they keep having.
Mm-hmm.
So my argument would be then have the semifinals if you're not going to do them on the New Year's Day because you don't want to integrate them with the Rose Bowl and the other bowl games that are traditional on New Year's Day. Then do it on Monday, and then have the national championship game on the following Tuesday if you want to have 8 days in between the games or whatever, so you can build up more hype.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just the logic of it is lost on me because I know that at the end of the day, it's all about them trying to maximize dollars for their media partners, spelled ESPN or Satan, devil, whatever you want to use.
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub, yes.
All right. Okay, so for those out there who enjoyed listening to this podcast, you could reach out to us if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can leave us a rating or review there. We always love hearing from the fans. You can also reach out to us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. We'll read your comment out on the air if you like and respond to it for you. So thank you all out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this particular episode. Until next week, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.